The magic mushroom side-to-side border is worked back and forth in rows. If you add this border to the beginning row, both the beginning and ending row of the mushrooms will point toward the center. This would be appropriate for a blanket, but if added to both ends of a scarf, the edges will be quite attractive, but when worn, the mushrooms will be upside down on both ends. No worries, that's why there are 3 variations in the companion pattern. Just follow the link in the description below to get your copy. This variation is intended to be added to an edge that's already finished. However, if you look, this is the right side, because if you're adding it to a blanket where it's on one end and on another end, you want them both to match. So I always make it a rule to put a marker on the right side of the finished piece. So now I'm going to show you how to add this edging to the other side. So with the right side facing, you want to attach your main color. Now I like to match it, but you can change it if you want, but I think it looks really nice matched because then you don't even realize that it's an add-on. So I attached my yarn in the end stitch, and I'm going to pull that through because I am going to work a single crochet in that very same stitch. I'll weave this end in later. Then I'm going to work 1 single crochet under both loops all the way to the end. Now, this is when you count your stitches. I have only 23 stitches here, and what I want to have is a multiple of 6 plus 1, which in this case would be 25. So I know I have to increase a couple across the row. And when you want to place an increase, you just put 2 single crochets in the same stitch. Now I don't do it at the edge because otherwise it'll look like it's flaring. So I do have to add a couple of stitches. So I'm going to do them toward the middle. If you have to take off a few, you need to insert your hook, pull up a loop, insert your hook in the next stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through all 3. That's a decrease, but I don't need decreases. I need a couple of increases. I'll meet you when I get to the end. Now I'm going to chain 3 and turn. At the base of the chain in that first stitch, I'm going to work 3 double crochets. It's important how we start the row and end the row. That's what makes it different, because we want to go from this side to this side, and we have to start with a half shell at the beginning. Now we're going to skip 2 and work a single crochet into the very next stitch. Skip 2 and work 7 double crochets into this stitch. The 7 double crochets create the shell. Skip 2, put a single crochet into the next stitch. Skip 2 and repeat the shell. Now you're going to do this all the way to the end, and I'll meet you then. Single crochet into the next one, skip 2 and work 4 double crochets into the very last stitch. Which is another half shell. We have a half shell on this end, a shell, a shell, a shell, and a half shell. So technically we have 4 shells because 2 halves do make 1 whole. Now we can cut this yarn, and I'm going to weave the ends in before I move on to the next row. And I'll meet you then. With the right side facing us, as I have marked it, I am going to attach my yarn in the very first double crochet of the row below. Now if you notice, even though it's the right side, the wrong side or the back side of the last row worked is facing me, and that is correct. Now I'm going to pull up a loop to attach the yarn and chain 3. But the first chain I'm going to do with a double strand and then pull that loop through just to lock it down a little bit. Then I'm going to chain 2 more. In the dip, there's a single crochet, and that's where I'm going to place a double crochet cluster. I'm going to yarn over, insert my hook, and pull up a loop. Like I was going to start a double crochet, yarn over and pull through 2 loops. But instead of pulling through the next 2 loops, I'm going to reserve that particular loop on my hook and then repeat it. Yarn over, insert, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. That's another incomplete double crochet. I'm going to do this 2 more times. Yarn over, insert, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. Reserve that loop. That's 4 loops on hook. Yarn over, insert, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. That's 5 loops on hook. When I get 5 loops on hook, that means I have 4 incomplete double crochets. I'm going to yarn over and pull through all 5 loops on the hook. Then I'm going to chain 3. 1, 2, and 3. In the 4th, which is the center double crochet of the shell, I am going to insert my hook and slip stitch. Then I'm going to chain 3 more and work another cluster in the dip, in the single crochet at the bottom of the dip. And you're going to repeat this all the way to the end. 3, and we're going to slip stitch right into the top of the turning chain, which is counts as the first double crochet of the row below. That created the stems for the mushrooms. Now for row 3, we're going to chain 1 and turn and continue in the same color. Work 2 single crochets in the first space. That brings you to the cluster. And you see there's 2 stitches right over the top of the cluster. Insert your hook, pull up a loop in the first one, then insert and pull up a loop in the second one. You have 3 loops on hook, and yarn over and pull through all 3. That's a single crochet 2 together over the cluster. Now we're going to work 2 more single crochets in the next space. When we get to the slip stitch at the top of the shell, insert and work a slip stitch. 2 single crochets in the next space, and so on, all the way to the end. 2 single crochets in the end space, and a slip stitch right in the end. At the end of row 3, we're going to just turn. Now, we're going to work a chain 1. That belongs to the first stitch. Then we're going to skip 2. In the next stitch, which is the single crochet 2 together in the row below, we're going to work a shell. So that's 7 double crochets right into that stitch. That's our 7th. We're going to skip 2, and right into the slip stitch, we're going to work another slip stitch. And we're going to continue skipping 2 and working another shell here, right over the stems, which is the cluster, of course, all the way to the end. I'll meet you there. That puts us right into the end stitch, and we're going to slip stitch. We have just finished 4 full mushrooms. That means we can cut our yarn and weave this end in before we begin again. And now this is the end that we ended on. I haven't turned yet. We are going to turn. Now we're going to return to row 1, and that is the last purple row in this case, and we're going to insert our hook right into that top of that stitch. We're going to add our yarn on, and we are going to do a chain 3 using a double strand of yarn. Pull the yarn end through, and then double wrap, insert the hook right into the same place, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over, pull through 2. That's a treble crochet. Now we're going to chain 3. And we're going to slip stitch under the front loop of the 4th double crochet of this shell. But that's going to pull out and get distorted. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a little trick. This is the front loop, but just under it, because it's the back side of this row, there's another loop. We're going to insert under both those front loops and slip stitch. If you look at the finished product, you're preserving this loop right here. So it always looks like the mushroom is not interrupted. So now we're going to chain 3. We still want to separate the mushrooms. We do this with a treble crochet cluster. Yarn over twice, as if you're going to make a treble crochet. Insert the hook. Now we're inserting and we're skipping all the way down these 3 rows going into that 4th row, which is the last main color row. Pull up a loop tightly, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. That reserves the last loop of the treble crochet. So this is an incomplete treble crochet. So we're preserving 1, and then we're going to go into a second one. 1, 2, insert, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. That reserves a second treble crochet, and you can see them right there. That leaves 3 on the hook, but we don't need a lot. So we're just going to yarn over and pull through all 3 loops to complete the treble cluster. Chain 3. 1, 2, 3. Use the same trick we did before, going into the front loop and the front loop, and slip stitch. Chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and then complete the final treble cluster right in that last stitch 4 rows below. And pull through all 3. Chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and turn. 3 double crochets right at the base of this chain 3. Now we could put them right here, or I'm going to show you a little trick. If you pull it apart, you'll find this little opening right here. That's the best place to put them. That's 1, 2, 3. We're going to work a slip stitch in the top of the other slip stitch that's over the mushroom. If you pull the 2 parts of this treble cluster apart, you'll find a little hole, and that is where we're going to put our 7 double crochets, because what that does, it adds more structure. It also centers the shell right over the sort of the stem perfectly. And you're going to repeat this all the way to the end. When you get all the way to the end, the only thing you have to do is work 4 double crochets right in the top of this cluster. And there you have it, the magic mushroom side-to-side border. Please take a moment to subscribe and ring the bell to receive notifications of upcoming videos and events. Happy crocheting!